What do you make of, you talked a lot about the lawsuits there, what do you make of President Trump's efforts to seemingly cast doubts on the validity of this election, to try to take end this election into the Supreme Court and suggest that people, veterans, say people based abroad who are casting their vote, absentee ballots, are somehow doing so illegitimately?
Yeah, well, I think it's a disgrace. I think that it's not simply unpresidential conduct. It's a demonstration why he should not be reelected to begin with. I want to be clear, even as a candidate, Donald Trump has the right to every legal remedy that's provided under state or federal law. I remember being on the receiving end of a recount. I spent 31 days in Florida in 2000 when Al Gore challenged George W. Bush's victory in Florida. Not anything I'd ever want to go through again. We all survived it because Bush won. I don't know how the Gore people feel about it even 20 years later. But nobody then said, oh, it's just terrible that Al Gore hasn't accepted the outcome in Florida. Trump has a right to his statutory remedies. But if he goes to court and makes allegations, he has to prove them. This is not politics where one person can say one thing and the other person can say the other. The judge is going to say, show me your evidence. And if there's no evidence, the case isn't going to go anywhere. That's why, as confusing as it may seem, and believe me, it seems confusing to many Americans too. The best remedy is just take a deep breath. We're going to get through this.
How much do you fear that what we're seeing at the moment could damage US democracy, that this casting doubt on processes that have existed for decades, people, many of his supporters now saying this election itself is somehow illegitimate? How much of a long-term impact do you fear that could have on US democracy?
Well, I think in part it depends on how protracted this post-election controversy is, but it's certainly one reason why, for the first time in my adult political life, I didn't vote for the Republican nominee for president. I do think Donald Trump has caused damage, both domestically and internationally, to the United States, but I think it can be repaired, and I'm optimistic, really, it can be repaired quickly. If he were to get a second term, however, I would very much worry that a lot of this damage would become irreparable, and that's something that we need to prevent.
If you were sitting in front of him now, knowing what you know about what he's planning to do in response to where we are at the moment, what would your message to him be? What would your advice to him be?
Well, it wouldn't last very long because he would fire me before I got out more than a few sentences. And I think, frankly, that's part of his problem. There's nobody around him now, with precious few exceptions, that can really stand up to him and say, Mr. President, you're hurting your own cause by doing this. Stop tweeting. I mean, that's been said a million times in 4 years. It's never worked. And now it's all on the line for Trump. And he fears the worst possible outcome for him is that he will be declared a loser. And he just doesn't know what to do. So it's, I don't think there are many extended rational conversations going on in the White House now. I think Trump is firing off ideas one after the other, and very few people are willing to say, we just can't do that, or that won't work, or that will actually hurt you. So I expect erratic behavior and potentially destructive behavior right up until the end.
I suppose the people who could do that potentially are people like Mitch McConnell, Republicans in the Senate. What role do you think they have to play in this if it becomes clear that the president has lost and yet refuses to accept it?
Well, I think at that point, it really falls, the responsibility falls to Republican leaders around the country to say this is over. And I've characterized this as a test for the Republican Party, test of our character. The too many Republicans, I think, have not disputed the president's claims, stood up against some of his policies. These are all things we're going to have a large conversation within the party about after it's over. But on this critical point of obeying the law and accepting the results as the process plays it out, there can be no compromise. And notwithstanding what any politician or any other Republican has said about Trump before, on this point, the party has to be united and absolutely clear. It's my hope and belief that's what will happen, but we'll know when the moment comes.